Imagine a time right after the American Revolution, when the young United States was barely holding together. In the wild frontier of what is now Tennessee, a group of rugged settlers decided they were done waiting for help from distant governments. They declared their own state, Franklin. It had a constitution, governors, laws, even its own currency. For 4 years, it thrived as America's 14th state in all but name. But then it vanished, erased from maps and history books. No monuments, no memorials, just whispers in the Appalachian Hills. Why was Franklin forgotten? And what can this tiny rebellion teach us about the chaotic birth of America? Let's dive into the story of the state that almost was. Now, settle in. This is a microhistory, a deep dive into a small, overlooked chapter of American life that reveals bigger truths about our nation's messy beginnings. We'll explore the people, the places, and the politics of Franklin, drawing from dusty archives and forgotten letters. By the end, you might see the United States a little differently. It all started in the aftermath of the Revolutionary War. The year was 1784. The United States had just won its independence from Britain, but victory came with chaos. The new nation was broke, divided, and sprawling westward into untamed lands. The Articles of Confederation, the country's first governing document, were weak, giving little power to the central government. States acted like mini countries, often ignoring Congress and squabbling over borders, debts, and trade. In the Western territories, things were even wilder. North Carolina, one of the original 13 states, claimed vast lands stretching from the Atlantic coast to the Mississippi River. This included the area east of the Appalachian Mountains, known as the Overmountain Settlements. These were remote valleys and ridges where hardy Scots-Irish settlers had carved out farms from the wilderness. Places like Jonesboro, Greenville, and Washington County, not to be confused with the capital. The settlers had fought bravely in the Revolution, most famously at the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780, where they helped turn the tide against the British. They expected gratitude. What they got was neglect. North Carolina's government, safe on the eastern seaboard, treated the Westerners like second-class citizens. Taxes were high, but no money came back for roads, forts, or protection from Native American raids. The Cherokee and other tribes, pushed off their lands, were striking back. Settlers lived in constant fear of attacks. To make matters worse, North Carolina's Assembly decided to cede the western lands to the federal government in April 1784 to pay off war debts. This meant handing over 29 million acres, including the homes of thousands, to Congress, which might sell it to Spain or France to settle national bills. The settlers exploded in anger. "We've bled for this land," they said. "We won't be sold like cattle." In August 1784, about 40 delegates from the western counties gathered in Jonesboro, a tiny log cabin town that would become Tennessee's oldest settlement. They met in a makeshift courthouse surrounded by the Blue Ridge Mountains. The air was thick with tobacco smoke and determination. Leading the charge was John Sevier, a tall, charismatic war hero with a scar across his cheek from a Cherokee tomahawk. Sevier, born in Virginia but hardened by frontier life, rallied the men. "If North Carolina won't protect us, we'll protect ourselves." On August 23rd, they voted to form a new state, Franklin. The name meant Land of the Free, a nod to their revolutionary spirit. They drafted a constitution inspired by North Carolina's, but with twists, stronger protections for settlers, and even talk of abolishing slavery, though that didn't stick. They elected Sevier as governor. William Koch, a fiery lawyer, was sent to Congress to petition for statehood. But Congress was a mess. Under the Articles, 9 out of 13 states needed to approve new admissions. On May 16, 1785, Koch presented the petition. 7 states voted yes. It fell short. Undeterred, the Frankliners renamed their state Franklin to honor Benjamin Franklin, hoping the famous inventor would endorse them. Franklin wrote back politely but declined. "I am too old for new adventures."
Still, the new state pressed on. For 4 years, Franklin operated as a sovereign republic. They printed their own money, notes backed by land and tobacco. They built courts, levied taxes, and even signed treaties with the Cherokee, though those broke down quickly. Jonesboro became the capital, with a population of about 500. It had a tavern where settlers swapped stories of bear hunts and British battles. Greenville hosted the legislature in a 2-story log building. Life was hard. Winters were brutal, summers sweltering, but there was a sense of pride. "We're free men," Sevier proclaimed in speeches. But trouble brewed. North Carolina rescinded its cession in November 1784, reclaiming the territory. Suddenly, 2 governments claimed the same land. North Carolina Governor Alexander Martin demanded taxes from Franklinites. Sevier refused. Tensions escalated into the Battle of Franklin, not a full war, but skirmishes. In 1786, North Carolina militia seized Franklin's courthouse in Jonesboro. Sevier's men retook it in a nighttime raid, using moonshine as liquid courage. Anecdotes from locals describe chaotic scenes: men firing muskets from behind log walls, women smuggling gunpowder in their skirts. The real threat came from Native Americans. The Cherokee, led by chiefs like Dragon Canoe, saw Franklin as invaders. Raids increased. In 1788, Cherokee warriors attacked a Franklin fort, killing women and children. Sevier responded with brutal retaliation, burning villages and seizing land. This Indian war drained Franklin's resources. Meanwhile, Spain, controlling the Mississippi River, offered alliance to Franklin if they seceded from the U.S. Sevier flirted with the idea, leading to accusations of treason. By 1788, Franklin was crumbling. Debt piled up. Internal fights erupted over slavery and land rights. North Carolina sent troops under Colonel Tipton to crush the rebellion. The Tipton-Sevier War culminated in February 1788 at Tipton's farm near Jonesboro. Sevier's 150 men attacked in a snowstorm. Gunfire echoed through the valley. Sevier lost, fleeing to the mountains. He was captured, chained, and dragged to North Carolina for trial. But in a daring escape, helped by his sons, Sevier slipped away and returned a hero. Franklin's end came quietly. In early 1789, Sevier swore allegiance to North Carolina to avoid treason charges. The state dissolved. Congress took the territory, forming the Southwest Territory. In 1796, it became Tennessee, the 16th state. Sevier became Tennessee's first governor, serving 6 terms. He died in 1815, buried with honors. But Franklin? Erased. Why was Franklin forgotten? It's a classic case of winners writing history. The new federal government, under the Constitution, ratified 1788, wanted unity, not reminders of failed breakaways. North Carolina buried the embarrassment. Tennessee celebrated its statehood, not the almost state. No battles like the Civil War to mythologize, just a footnote in archives. Yet Franklin reveals big truths. It shows the fragility of early America. States could splinter easily. It highlights frontier democracy, ordinary farmers crafting their own laws. And it exposes the dark side, land stolen from Native Americans, fueling endless conflicts. In Jonesboro today, a small museum holds Franklin's Constitution. Locals reenact the state of Franklin every year, keeping the memory alive in the hills. But walk those valleys at dusk, and you might hear echoes of Sevier's speeches or see shadows of delegates debating freedom. Franklin may be gone, but its spirit lingers, a reminder that America was built on forgotten dreams.
Everyone knows Jamestown, Virginia, 1607, the first permanent English colony in America. But what if I told you there was another English settlement that started the same year, in Maine? 120 men and boys sailed across the Atlantic, built a fort, launched a ship, and tried to create a New England in the frozen north. They called it Popham Colony. It lasted only 14 months. Then it vanished, abandoned, burned, and erased from history. No Thanksgiving stories, no monuments,
just ruins buried under pine trees. Why did Popham fail when Jamestown survived? And why did America forget its northern birthplace? Tonight, we dig into the forgotten story of the colony that could have changed everything. Put on headphones. This is a deep micro-history, the story of one small, doomed settlement on the coast of Maine that reveals the brutal reality of early America. The year is 1606. King James I has just taken the throne after Queen Elizabeth's death. England is buzzing with dreams of empire. Spain and France are already claiming huge chunks of the New World. England is late to the game. Two companies are formed, the Virginia Company of London for the south and the Virginia Company of Plymouth for the north. The Northern Company gets the rights to everything from modern-day New York to Canada. On May 31, 1607, the same month Jamestown is founded, two ships leave Plymouth, England, the Gift of God and the Mary and John. On board, 120 colonists, mostly men, no women, no children. This is a business venture, not a family migration. Leading the expedition is George Popham, a 55-year-old aristocrat with no wilderness experience, and Raleigh Gilbert, a hot-headed 25-year-old nephew of Sir Walter Raleigh. They cross the Atlantic in just 6 weeks, faster than Jamestown's voyage. On August 19, 1607, they land at the mouth of the Kennebec River in what is now Maine. The site is perfect. Deep water for ships, tall pines for building, fish everywhere. The local Abenaki people watched from the shore. First contact is peaceful. The English trade knives for furs. They name the place Fort St. George after England's patron saint. Work begins immediately. They build a star-shaped fort with 12 cannons. They construct 50 houses, a church, a storehouse. Most impressive, they build a 30-ton ship called the Virginia, the first English ship built in America. It will sail back to England loaded with furs and timber. Life is hard. The soil is rocky. The growing season is short, but the colonists are skilled. Many are shipwrights and craftsmen sent specifically for this purpose. President George Popham writes letters home full of optimism. "We have found a place as good as any in the world." Then winter hits. Maine winter 1607 to 1608 is one of the coldest on record. The Kennebec River freezes solid. Snow piles 4 feet deep. Food runs low. Scurvy appears. The Abenaki, who know how to survive these winters, keep their distance. On February 5, 1608, George Popham dies. Cause unknown, probably cold and malnutrition. Leadership falls to Raleigh Gilbert. He's young, impulsive, and more interested in exploring than governing. Back in England, news arrives that Raleigh Gilbert's older brother has died, making Raleigh heir to a large estate. He decides to return home to claim his inheritance. In September 1608, the remaining colonists, about 75, hold a meeting. They vote to abandon the colony. They load the Virginia and the other ships with everything they can carry and sail back to England. When they arrive home in October 1608, they bring proof that northern colonization is possible, timber, furs, and the Virginia itself. But the story of Popham disappears. Why? First, the Virginia Company of Plymouth loses interest. The northern climate is too harsh for quick profits. They shift focus south. Second, Jamestown survives, barely, and becomes the success story. The Virginia Company of London pours money into promoting Jamestown. John Smith's dramatic tales of Pocahontas and adventure sell better than the quiet failure of Popham. Third, the site is abandoned. The Abenaki reclaim the land. The fort rots. By the time later settlers arrive, nothing remains but rumors. But Popham wasn't a total failure. The Virginia ship proved England could build vessels in America. The maps and surveys from Popham helped future colonists, and the colonists themselves scattered. Many joined Jamestown, bringing valuable skills. The site was rediscovered in 1994 by archaeologists. They found the fort's foundations, tools, pottery. Today, it's a quiet state park called Popham Colony Historic Site in Phippsburg, Maine. A few signs, some reconstructed buildings, no crowds. Walk the beach there today and you can almost hear them, 120 Englishmen hammering in the cold, building a new world that would vanish before it began. America remembers Plymouth Rock and Jamestown, but Popham, the colony that came first, built first, and failed first, forgotten. Yet in its brief life, Popham shows us the real story of early America, not heroic beginnings, but desperate attempts, harsh winters, and the thin line between success and oblivion. Next time you're in Maine, visit the quiet beach at Popham. Stand where the fort once stood. Listen to the waves, and remember the men who tried to plant England's flag in the frozen north and almost succeeded.